Hi, I'm Phil Simmons. I'm with Operation Playground, and we're gathered together today to talk a little bit about Fort Frankfort. Fort Frankfort recently celebrated its 10th birthday party, and we thought it might be kind of fun to reminisce back in the creation of that fort and tell some stories about how we did it and what went on. Many of you watching this program probably participated in it. You were here 10 years ago and volunteered your time to help. So you know the story well, but I think you'll get a kick out of watching some of the pictures we've come up with and reminiscing with us. And to those people that weren't here in Frankfort at that time, you may just take it for granted when you go out for Fort Frankfort that, it just was, sort of built like any other piece of park equipment, but it wasn't. And this story is going to tell you how it was built and the kinds of volunteer effort that was involved in doing it. I think you might find it very, very interesting. The story kind of starts back in 1998, and that 60-acre parcel of Commissioner Park that you're very familiar with, the Park District had just bought that, and it was farmland, and they had just kind of created it into and seeded it into what it was just basically a dirt road and dandelions at the time. There wasn't anything else out there. And they had pretty much exhausted their capital budget in buying that acreage. And also they spent a lot of money in fixing up Founder Center, and you're all familiar with Founder Center in town. So they were trying to come up with an idea. What can we do? What can we put out there that will really be interesting and unique and fascinating and fun, but we don't really have any real money to spend on it? How can we kind of pull this off? Terry Russ is going to tell you how she came up with the idea.
I had been up to visit my folks in Norway, Michigan in the fall of 1998, and at that time their community was building a fort on the lake. It was an amazing sight to see. They had the whole community out there building and painting and getting everything organized, and I thought, what a great idea. And at that point I was ending a 9-year stint on the Frankfort Park District, and I had gone to the park board meeting and talked with Jeff Bobulik and the board, and I said, this is a great idea. We had the Commissioner's Park now with nothing on it. I said, this would be a great place to put that playground like this. I said, what do you think? Should we go ahead and start something like this? And they all kind of sat back and, well, how much money was this going to cost us? And I said, it's not going to cost you anything. We'll raise money and we'll do it as a community. So what we did is they kind of said, well, okay, let's see what we can do with this. And we decided on, with Jeff and I were going to conduct a meeting in February. This had been in the fall, and we would invite the community to come. We advertised it, we put it in the brochure, and we asked for anybody who would be interested in helping build a playground. We hadn't called it a fort at that point, for our community to please attend. We were a little nervous. We weren't sure exactly how many people we would get. That night, Jeff and I were there and we're waiting. The room filled up. We were amazed. We sent around clipboards of committees of what we would need and volunteers to help us with. There were committees such as volunteer committee, tools committee, maintenance committee, food committee, child care, children's committee, which would provide games for kids to play while their parents were building, fundraising, special needs committee for what they could do for children with special needs at the fort, and the final one was a maintenance day. So we talked about all those different committees during this meeting and asked, is there any interest that you have in any of those committees? And we sent the clipboards around and people signed up, and afterwards Jeff and I had sat and we talked about who would be good for the committees and where should we go from here. So probably 2 weeks after that, we contacted all the people who had signed up for committees, and we told them what they were going to be doing. And from that point on, which was the end of February, all the way through October, we had some type of meeting every single week with some committee or other. I attended all of them, and we worked on what we needed to do for each committee. Each committee had a person in charge that took charge of everything. For example, Rich Stanavich's was in charge of the materials committee, and he helped getting all of the materials we were going to need through with the help of Leathers. Leathers and Associates were the builders of the Norway project that I had went to see in Michigan, and when I found out that they helped this community do this project, I contacted them. They had a website and they had all different playgrounds from all over the country that they had helped build. So I contacted them and said, how can we do that in our community? And I got in touch with a number of people there who I was in constant contact with. And when we decided we were going to do this, they sent us what we would need for materials. They sent us how much money we would need to raise, how many volunteers we would need. They sent us the specs for everything. So it was a matter of giving it to the committees and letting them go from there to see how were they going to get what they needed.
Terry mentioned all the committees, and there's some great stories about them because they did such a fantastic job in so many respects. Each one of them, were just really set themselves apart, and you have sort of memories of them. And she mentioned like the food committee, and we had this big tent. It was like a circus tent out there, and it would accommodate probably, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 people inside it easily. And like Terry said, 3 meals a day. During construction week, we're served out there, and we had some great cooperation from local restaurants like Enrico's and Aurelio's, and the people would really come away just raving about the fact, and of course it kept everybody on site that way, so that the volunteers would go from one shift to the second shift to the third shift, because we were running 3 shifts of volunteers a day, and our goal was to get somewhere between 75 and 125 people per shift out there. So that volunteer committee was busy. And as you can imagine, having the food right on site meant everybody stayed there. And the other reason the people stayed there, especially the women, and boy were they helpful, was because they had a place to take their children during the day so they could work. And those child care committees that Terry was talking about just did a phenomenal job. I mean, they set it up at St. Anthony's Parish in the basement. And they had clowns for the kids, they had magicians, they had all kinds of things going on, activities. And I'd hear moms talking about stories about how their kids were begging to come back the next day. Mom, let's go back to the fort. I want to go back and back in the child care again, because they had so much fun the day before. So it made it very easy for the moms to come out and work during the day when they'd have their little ones along with them. And we had all kinds of activities. And some of the older kids that would show up, it was very important that the wood was so hard that was used in construction, that the screws that you would use to put the pieces together actually would have a hard time going through that wood. It was that dense. So some of the kids, the older kids, would actually wax these screws so that they would actually go in a lot easier. And they waxed thousands and thousands that way, and they enjoyed it. They had a good time, and it worked. Let me tell you, it made it a lot easier if you were out there building and you had a wax screw versus you could tell the difference right away. It was really pretty interesting. The tool committee was another interesting thing. John Herder, who owns Herder Trucking, he donated one of his semi-trailers for it, and Rich kind of built out a shed inside that thing. And the way this worked was really kind of clever. A week before construction, all the volunteers would bring their tools out to the shed. Every tool was cataloged. Your name was recorded, and a tag was put on the tool, and then you were given the other side of it, so you know which your identification tag. So it was written down who you were and what your number was, and then your number was on the tool. Well, of course, everybody brought loads and loads of tools, dozens of tools. You bring hammers and screwdrivers and electric drills and ladders and wheelbarrows and everything you could pull out of your garage and bring them up the week before. And that way, when you showed up to work, you didn't have to bring any tools with you. They were already there waiting for you, and you could just, when you were assigned a job, you'd go right and get your tools and go to work. That was kind of clever, and it worked very, very well. And of course, the materials committee, when we got all this material in ahead of construction, as you can imagine, tens of thousands of dollars worth of materials were showing up there. We were real concerned about the safety of it. There had been some occasions, where sometimes things would be missing. So we asked the Boy Scouts, Boy Scout Troop number 270, to come on out and bivouac out there at the fort several days before construction would begin, when the materials arrived and when construction was going to begin. So the Scouts, the Boy Scouts, actually guarded our materials out there until the project began. And that was kind of special too, and they had a great time, and everything was safe, of course. Going back to the tools, when I mentioned how everybody took their tools and volunteered and turned them all in, after construction week was over and everyone came back to collect their tools, not one tool was missing. course, the big week was construction week, and that's when everything had to come together. And it started on Tuesday, October 11th. All the months of planning, all the months of preparation were all going to come down to the next few days because this thing had to be built by that Sunday. That's how long the volunteers had signed up for. And after Sunday, we were out of volunteers and the project was over. So we had to get to work, and we had to get to work fast. So Tuesday, they started drilling the holes for all those poles that you see out there. They had 2 major big crane type hole drillers out there, and they were putting hundreds of holes in the ground where these poles were going to be dropped. The police force came out and volunteered to help us, and we have pictures of Daryl Sanders, who was the chief of police at that time, carrying poles and dropping holes with the rest of his crew. Everybody really worked hard. When you came out to volunteer to work, when you were one of the volunteers, one of the first questions they'd ask you is, are you skilled or unskilled? And what they meant by that was, do you feel comfortable working with power tools, or would you prefer not to? And you were given a tag that would clearly indicate which category you had decided. Because we actually had people out there that were just safety monitors. Their whole job was to just walk around the fort at the time and make sure that people were using power equipment correctly and safely, because we didn't want to have any accidents out there, and we didn't want any injuries. And as a matter of fact, we didn't have any. It worked out very well. So you were either skilled or unskilled, and what happened was then you would be assigned a crew chief, and you would go and work with that site captain. And the site captain would have a very small job he'd be working on, but you'd be a part of it, and you'd go to the tool shed and get the appropriate tools and report back to him, and that's where you'd start working. So Tuesday, a lot of it was just putting poles in the holes in the ground. Then it came Wednesday, the basic construction started to be put together. We had a separate tent that was there that was just strictly for cutting wood to specific sizes, and also for staining all the wood, because every piece of lumber out there had to be sealed, or I should say sealed, not stained, but they were all sealed. So we had volunteers that did nothing but seal wood those first few days and get it ready. And then of course the other thing was the mulch. When you're out there playing, you may not realize it, but you're standing on about 18 inches of mulch, and below that is about 4 or 5 inches of gravel. All that had to be moved in, and that was all done by quote-unquote unskilled labor, which meant we had to move mountains of mulch that was accumulated out there and spread it around the base, and that's the base of that fort. So when you're standing on the ground out there, the ground really is about 18 inches lower than where you're standing. It was really pretty incredible. Volunteers, they'd work till 10 o'clock at night, sometimes even a little bit later than that. Every single night they were out there working. And as the work progressed, everything was coming to a head. And we were right on schedule. Everything was moving great, keeping up pace. We had full shifts on every one of our shifts. Then came Saturday. Saturday was a very interesting day. It was our biggest volunteer day. The most people had signed up to help us that day, and it was a critical day, because if we didn't have a successful Saturday, we may not get this thing done. Well, our luck had been great with weather up to that point in time. We had beautiful days to work and beautiful evenings to work. But Saturday turned really nasty. We had a big storm come rolling in. So the fellas put up tarps over the entire fort. We had these huge blue tarps to shelter the workers and the materials and everything else from the rain. And with the storm came this big windstorm that came in with it. So these tarps were like billowing like sails on a ship, flapping in the wind as they were trying to tie them down. I'll never forget it. But you know what? Everyone stayed, everyone worked, and Saturday turned out to be a big success. And then of course the last day was Sunday, when everything was kind of tidied up and put together. And the last thing, it was a hectic day, and a lot to be done, a lot of catching up to do. But it came to pass, and then Sunday evening we were done. One of the projects the kids had worked on during the week when they were at St. Anthony's was they made this huge paper chain. They had cut paper and they'd made these chain links and put them all together. And we stretched this paper chain in front of the fort. And then Terry Russin got up on top of above where the front of the fort is, and she had a countdown. And as she counted down and got to 0, all the kids who had all accumulated in front of the fort burst through the chain, ran into the fort and played for about an hour and a half to 2 hours after that. And that was the official opening of Fort Frankfort at that time. Pretty exciting event.
Every year, in order to keep this park and playground looking as beautiful as it is, we, with the help of Lincoln Way East students, National Honor Society, Young Life has helped, and Key Club. They come out every year, they sand, they stain, they paint, they add sand, they add mulch, the things that we need to keep this looking as good as it is. It would never be as beautiful if we didn't have the help of Lincoln Way East every year. Our committee meets out there with those kids, and we take a whole day and get this done in a day. Usually we have around 30 people come every year.
Well, hopefully all of you had a chance to come out to Fort Frankfort with your families, your children and grandchildren, and enjoy it, and realize that it really is a very, very special place. And now you know how it was built with all volunteer help and all private money that was raised independently and all done by private citizens. And it really is kind of an amazing accomplishment. And you and I, who have been out there, realize really what a great feat this was. But it was recognized by other people as well, people around the state. As a matter of fact, in the year 2000, the Illinois Association of Park Districts gave Fort Frankfort the designation of Park Facility of the Year award. And that was against all competitors, no matter what size town they were. From Chicago down to the smallest town, they won first place in the state. They also got the Illinois Association of Park Districts Community Service Award that year. On a broader note, in the Great Lakes region, the Fort Frankfort Park received the third runner-up for the Illinois Great Lakes Association's Park Facility Award. And then lastly, and certainly not least, the effort that was put in, the volunteer effort that was put into Fort Frankfort earned Frankfort its first 2000 Illinois Governor's Hometown Award. Very prestigious awards for a job that was really done by an amazing group of people, an amazing town, and an amazing accomplishment. So we all hope that you'll come out again soon. We want you to enjoy your visit, and certainly we want you to share our pride. Thank you very much.
If you're interested in helping the Operation Playground Foundation, please contact the Park District or come into the Park District and leave your name and number, and they'll give it to us and we'll contact you.